I find with a lot of my clients who come for coaching, they often want to talk about a situation that they are unhappy with. And they might describe a situation with a colleague or a peer or a report. They can describe what's happening really clearly. And when I ask them, have you been able to have that conversation with that person? They will often say no, that they have felt uncomfortable or they have avoided the conversation. So today I'm going to give you a model which will help you to deliver feedback which achieves its goal. And where somebody's performing well and you want to give them positive feedback, the goal is that the person feels really clear about how they've added value and feels really good about the value that they have added. Where we're looking at developmental feedback, the goal of the feedback is that the person feels really clear about where something hasn't added value. And we're not in the business of making people feel bad. It's just to give people that clarity. Today, the model or the structure that I want to give you, it really encompasses the 4 types of things that we might talk about when we're giving feedback. And the model is called the BOF model for giving feedback. So, what is it about? I'm going to give you the model and then I'm going to illustrate it by way of a couple of examples, some where we're giving positive feedback and some where we're giving, if you like, that developmental feedback. If you watched yesterday's video, which was called the feedback donut, that was really about disentangling the story we tell ourselves about somebody as opposed to the actual behaviour. So the first B of this BOF model is behaviour, where we will hold up to somebody that mirror of their performance and say, this is what you did, this is the evidence. And so it's for the behaviour or the pattern of behaviour that we are experiencing. The O stands for outcome, the outcome or impact or result of the behaviour. That could be on me, on them, on the team, on the product, on the performance, on whatever. The F stands for feelings. So how I feel about that. I might be very grateful, I might be excited, or I might be concerned. I think concern is a good word to use when we're giving developmental feedback. And then the second F is the F of future. And that's really the ask or the next steps. Now I've written the B very big because the B part of this model is mandatory. It's like your greens. You have to eat them. The B has to be in there. But you know, sometimes that's enough. I'm a real believer that we need to keep feedback as light as we can. Allow it to do its job. Allow somebody to go in and fix something before it becomes a big issue. And the OFF are what I call the pick and mix. You can use these as you wish. So let me give you an example of something positive. Let's say I want to say, you know what, John, you got that information to me early, and what that meant was I could finish my report before the weekend. I was really glad to go off on my weekend without thinking about that report. Keep up the good work. So that is a full BOFF. But you don't always have to use the 4 of them. What I like about this model is how flexible it is. It might be that I want to say, you know what, Mary, I noticed that when I ask somebody to, help in a project, you always put your hand up. And I'm really grateful for that. And that's just the B and the F. Let's look at this from the point of view of developmental feedback. And before I go into this, I want to say that, when we give somebody developmental feedback, we really need to pause and think, what's our intention here? What is it we're trying to achieve? What else might be happening in this person's life? How big or heavy does this feedback need to be? How light might it be? We also need to think about whether we want to give the feedback. I want to share my experience of working with you, or whether we maybe want to coach the feedback. So Julia, I want to talk to you about how you're doing, but first I'd like to hear, how do you think you're doing? What's working well for you? What's not working so well? And so on. From the point of view of this video, just to illustrate the model, I want to do a tell feedback. So let's imagine a very simple scenario. You have somebody who works in reception and they arrive to work late. So what you might say to them is, John, I notice that you're arriving late for work. And it's simply the B of behaviour, and now I'm going to hopefully let John go off and fix that himself without making a big fuss. But I might also decide to say, John, I noticed that you're arriving late for work, and what that means is Mary has to man the reception for 15 minutes every day. Or I might say, John, I noticed that you're arriving late to work, and I'm concerned that this is becoming a habit. Or I might say, John, I noticed you're arriving late to work, and I need you here at 9 o'clock. Or I might decide to do a full BOF. John, I notice you're arriving late to work. What that means is Mary is, manning reception for 15 minutes every day. I'm concerned that she's falling behind in her own work, and I need you to assure me that you're going to be here at 9 o'clock. So the model is beautifully flexible, and of course we need to temper our language according to how big or how serious an issue is versus how likely we might be able to communicate it. So that is the BOF model for giving feedback. And tomorrow I am going to share with you some really great questions that you might explore and prepare around if you were going to have a conversation that was going to be really tough. So thank you for watching this.